Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Scale series, where I'm connecting you to founders who are scaling their companies to levels many of us just aspire to. With us on the line from California is Sean Corson. He is the co-founder of Daasity. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to be here.
Sean, for our viewers around the world who potentially haven't heard about the cool things you guys are doing there, why don't you give us the elevator pitch about Daasity? Tell us a bit about who your customers are and the problem that you guys solve.
Yeah, absolutely. So Daasity is a data and analytics platform designed for direct-to-consumer companies. So we help them take their various data silos, aggregate them into one place, and build some analytics and visualizations on top of that.
Okay, so who's your sweet spot customer?
Yeah, so sweet spot customers, like I said, really just focused on direct to consumer. Mainly, most of our merchants are about 20 million in revenue a year or up. We have merchants that are as large as over $1 billion to $2 billion a year in revenue. So, we're able to support really smaller companies as well as large organizations.
So, Sean, scaling companies is all usually a revenue conversation. I think many of us are either being measured on how much we've raised or how much revenue we're generating. How much have you guys raised to date?
We've raised just over 20 million.
So how much in terms of your strategy funding to scale? That's obviously something a lot of startup founders do or startups do is continually get into these funding cycles. With the market being the way that it is right now, you're obviously the CFO, so this is more like a finance focused type conversation we'll probably have today, or at least I certainly hope so. But when it comes to the market being what it is and the cost of capital being what it is, Sean, what is your advice to a founder right now to basically raise, or who is in a process of raising capital to scale? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think the last 6 to 12 months have been kind of a bit of a reset to the fundamentals, back to fundamentals, right? So, between 2010 to 2022, we kind of had this crazy bull market where there was a lot of funding getting done at some pretty crazy valuations, especially, after like 2017, 2018, you just had some pretty high valuations that were really primarily based around growth rates, right? So grow the top line. And that was driving pretty much everything. And I think what you're seeing now as VCs and startups are moving into this new world of, there's not always going to be a VC money light at the end of the tunnel, is all right. We need to manage the business fundamentals, which means, managing to our unit economics, making sure that, whatever we're selling at a profit, and it's enough of a profit to fund the business. I think that really kind of gets down to the basics of what startups need to be aware of when they're going out to raise money.
Sean, many of us talk about this idea of product market fit, and then and only then should you really push the scale button. To your point, you used the term, unit economics, and I don't think many of us even know what that means practically in many of our startups, right? It's something that is like, oh yeah, we'll know that one day, but we don't actually know if you put, $1 in, I'm going to get $2 or $3 out. And so many of us, this idea of product market fit, and also, by the way, going back to the idea of raising capital to scale, is very much predicated upon knowing your unit economics and knowing, are you actually at product market fit? Because if you try and scale prior to that, it suddenly becomes, well, holy shit, I put $1 million into this engine and I've only got like 800 out.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of the, I think that's the realization that a lot of VCs, a lot of startups are kind of realizing is they weren't exactly paying attention to that, and it's the business might not be fully upside down in terms of margin, but they're not in a place where they can go out and raise another round, and VCs are going to look at those metrics and say, hey, this looks great. This is something where, we can give you $20 million and you can take it and you can grow 5x or 10x, whatever that number might be.
So how did you know when you guys were at product market fit? Were there financial indicators that you were using to say, hey guys, we're here?
Yeah. The history of Daasity, kind of when we started Daasity, is an interesting backstory in that when Dan and I started, we were really just focused on consulting. So we were consulting with direct-to-consumer companies and essentially building custom data solutions for each one of them, right? So we were essentially charging by the hour, and we were going in and building different integrations and different visualizations just on a one-off basis. Dan, I think from the beginning, kind of had in the back of his mind, we're going to be doing the same thing over and over again here, right? So it's perfect for a software model. So our sort of approach to, us getting to product market fit was interesting in that we kind of had it from the beginning. We knew that there were merchants that were willing to pay for what we were doing on a consulting basis. And because of that, we were able to bootstrap it for a while. But kind of making that transition to the software model did require us to then make a few changes around, like, listen, the service, the support model is different, right? As you're going from consulting to software, and the onboarding model is different. Like, all of that stuff needs to be a little more self-serve, and that's, I think, where we kind of had to find that product market fit and get to a place where it was like, yeah, this is making sense. And to kind of answer that question, I think, yeah, it's at the end of the day, it really was a I think metric driven. So when you're at a place where month after month after month after month, you're seeing the kind of year-over-year growth rates, it's like 2x, 3x every single month. Yeah, that's when okay, this is something that's working. Especially when you're early and you may not have a large sales team, large marketing team, and you're still getting those growth rates. Yeah, obviously people want what you're selling at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had Brett Lovac on the show last week, and we were talking about services businesses, and obviously we all know that services businesses rather are inherently difficult to scale. And we were talking about personal experience I had, where I had a really big services business that was trying to then transition into a product space, which is kind of what you guys have done. And Brett was of the view, he's like, if you're a services business and you're trying to now pivot into a technology business, like, good luck. Yeah. And he said 9 times out of 10 that will fail because they're fundamentally different. Like, it's a totally different mindset for the founders and everything else that goes along with it, like trying to scale, like a content business versus like a hardcore SaaS platform, like which is what you guys have done. To make that jump is oftentimes a jump that many of us don't make. Why do you think you were successful in that jump?
Yeah, it's funny. So to rewind on that a little bit, I go back and I think sometimes, like, what would I recommend taking that approach to other people, right? To a different founder. And I think this does kind of get at like what made us successful. I think there are certain markets where it makes sense in that you have a customer that's willing to pay for what you're doing, and a customer that is looking for, I'll say, I think what the key to ours really was is that merchants were looking for there's kind of an end-to-end data platform ecosystem, right? Where there's step 1 is kind of ingesting data. Step 2 is storing it. Step 3 is, transforming it, putting it into a usable format. Step 4 is visualizing it, creating analytics out of that. And then step 5 is generally taking that data, pushing it back out to a marketing platform like a Facebook or a Twitter or a TikTok. What we found was that merchants didn't necessarily want that complete end-to-end solution. Some did, but some didn't. And you could really take that end-to-end solution and break it into different parts that all could kind of be their own product at the end of the day. I think that has really helped us to kind of make that transition, in that um, you know, it is such a hard step to go from consulting to software. Like I said, the support side and the onboarding side were really the biggest leaps, I think, that we found, where we're talking, back 5 years ago, it was Dan and I talking to all of our merchants, once a month or twice a month. They're getting white glove service. Dan and I are e-commerce experts. We've been in the e-commerce game. We know direct to consumer. We know direct to consumer analytics. And so to transition away from that, yeah, it's tough. You have to basically take those merchants and say, hey, you're not going to get me anymore. You're going to get someone else that we've trained up for this role. And it's going to be a little more self-serve. So the ability to kind of take those merchants that we had and say, listen, we've developed this product for you. We've developed this service for you. We're going to transition you away from having kind of the white glove service. And at the same time, recognizing that there was a market out there that wanted a bunch of different pieces that didn't necessarily require a lot of hands-on service. I think that's what kind of helped in that transition. That was a very long answer. I don't know if that was too much information, but the ecosystem itself to me kind of spoke to merchants willing to pay and frankly being used to paying for software and a product that did one or two specific things without getting this giant range of a solution.
So, Sean, what have you guys built? What does your platform actually do for a merchant?
So, what I was just describing was kind of the end-to-end data platform. So, if you are a direct-to-consumer company, you're using anywhere from, let's say, 10 or more different pieces of software or marketing vendors or different sources of data, right? And none of those sources talk to each other. So you've got, let's say your Shopify platform, and that's got a bunch of data around customers and orders and who's coming to your site. And then you've got Google Analytics that has more information around site analytics. You've got Amazon, maybe if you sell on Amazon. You've got Facebook where you're marketing. You've got TikTok where you're marketing. All of those data sources contain useful things, but you can't really get a complete picture of the business without really putting that all together, right? So what our platform does is it puts it all together. We ingest that data, we put it into one data warehouse, and then we have a set of sort of transformation code that takes that data and really pieces it together. We're linking customers that are coming to your site with customers that have ordered, and customers from Amazon with customers from Shopify, to really give you a full view into things like what's your lifetime value, right? A lot of our merchants, they have customers buying on Amazon, customers buying on Shopify, and they have no idea, well, I don't know if they're the same people, right? And so you might be marketing to someone on Shopify that's now just coming to you exclusively through Amazon. You're creating things like customer segments that can then again be pushed out to your marketing vendors so that they can, really get a useful view into who your customers are, what kind of products they want to see, what price points they want to see. Do they want to see discounts? So it's really that end-to-end data picture, taking all that data, piecing it together, and then giving merchants the ability to kind of make data-driven decisions.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, guys, and we'll be back. The Matt Brown Show is presented by Carafin, an investment bank that offers and supports direct private investments in U.S. operating companies. Over the past 20 years, investors have placed over $1.2 billion of private debt and equity in more than 100 companies through Carafin and its affiliates. Carafin leverages technology to empower its community of investors to deploy their capital far more efficiently than ever before, and connects their community of engaged investors with worthy companies. Invest portions of your portfolio in direct private investments today. Visit carafin.com/Matt Brown Show for more. And we're back. Sean, a question about this idea of increasing revenue. What is, in the context of scale, a common misconception about scale as it relates to revenue generation? You guys are obviously helping, direct-to-consumer brands or merchants scale through data mapping platform technology. And then you guys are also scaling. So I'm curious you're sitting in this interesting position, aren't you? Where you have clients helping them scale, and then you're doing it yourself. So is there a common misconception, or is there an idea that you find coming up frequently in your engagement with either merchants or in your own experience?
So, my background being in data and finance, I'll kind of take that from two sides. One, I'll talk about our merchants, right? So, when I think about our merchants, I think, and I suppose this is true for us as well. A lot of people think of what you mentioned earlier, product market fit, right? Once you have product market fit, you're ready to scale. Boom, you're done, go, run with it. And I think what we've really seen with our merchants is a lot of merchants achieving product market fit, getting to 50 to 100 million in revenue, and then stalling out. And to us, the reason why that happens often with e-commerce is just a lack of understanding around data and processes, right? So really on the data side, merchants, what a lot of times we'll see is merchants have attacked one or two marketing channels. They've really scaled those channels, but it's not an endless sea of new customers there, right? And so they sort of soak up all the new customers in those channels, and then all of a sudden their CAC and their ROAS aren't looking so hot, and they're stuck. A lot of merchants aren't kind of thinking about retention and how do we get those customers to come back and buy again, which really comes down, retention is just all about data, right? It's about segmenting your customers, understanding what they want, putting the right things in front of them at the right time. So I think for our merchants, that's what we see a lot. It's this idea that, we have product market fit, we can scale, let's go. But then you just kind of run out of steam as you're kind of soaking up all of the new customers from your channels. I think for our business, we're B2B software. So, there's no Facebook advertising where we're going out and just slamming a paid social channel with a lot of spend, right? And I think on our end, there is a little bit of we've got product market fit. We have to get our name out there to people, and the game's a little different. So we're going to conferences, we're going to events, we're trying to. It's a lot more brand advertising, I think, rather than sort of like direct advertising. But I'll say honestly, from our point of view, it's probably a little bit of the same issue of you have product market fit, but there are processes and data that you really need to kind of take it to the next level. So as you're going from a 2 million to a 5 million ARR company, and then from 5 million to 20 million, you really need to have everything kind of locked down from a service/support standpoint, right? You need to have those the merchants that you're supporting. It needs to be a process that really makes them really puts them first, really gets them kind of locked down. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling a little bit on this one. I think on the merchant side, it's really it's really been pretty obvious to me, is it's like we see this time and time again where merchants are going from 20 to 50 million in revenue, and then they just stop growing and they don't really understand it. It's like, well, yeah, you've used Facebook to grow your business for the last 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and that's not necessarily always, that channel isn't always going to be the number one source of your new customers.
So interesting that, right? Because we were always like trying to get to that next revenue level, aren't we? It's like 1 million, then 2, then 4, then 16, and so on. And what you're saying is really interesting in that, companies, irrespective, and obviously you're talking about merchants and so forth, but it's interesting just to know that companies that hit these amazing revenue numbers, 20 odd million, 25 million, they stop. It's weird,
Yeah.
right? It's like, why? Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I imagine if I was sitting on a as a founder, right? And I was on like a 5-year, sort of timeline, and I was like, shit, we got to 25 million in 5 years. That's an amazing story. That's an amazing growth story. And then it stops.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And when I say that, what I think about is the saying that you never rise to the level of your goals, you always fall to the level of your systems.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is it's actually the system and the role of data in that system, mapping different channels, creating a visualized layer of that system so that founders can go, oh, snap, that's why we've stopped growing, or this is why we're not retaining customers, or this is why our cost of acquisition on this channel is outperforming our CAC on these other 3. And so as a consequence, what you can do is turn off the channels that aren't giving you the kind of return on ad spend that you might be looking for. And so when you're able to make that decision, you're actually creating a more efficient system. And that more efficient system is what you're saying is, I believe, is ultimately what's going to get you to 40 million or 30 million, as an example.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. I mean, the problems that, when Dan and I started Daasity, the problems that I'm solving today, I never imagined back then, right? It was like, back then it was kind of like, like I said, we started with consulting. So it was like, okay, we need to make sure we've got enough to run payroll. We've got we're billing enough to run payroll, and that we're collecting enough. And then, okay, let's go find a couple more merchants. And now it's like, yeah, it is all internal system management systems. Like I said, support, customer service, just onboarding, just making sure all of that stuff is as tight as it can be, so that your merchants are happy, your customers are happy, you're getting referrals. It's really the name of the game once you get over a certain point in revenue.
Sure, and that statement of yours around you didn't expect to wind up with the business that you have is something that I've encountered many, many, many times. Like pretty much every single business that I've ever started that scaled to any sort of successful level whatsoever. It was like, I didn't expect this. You know what I mean? Like, oh, cool, I'm going to go out there and solve this problem. No, you're not.
Yeah, right. It's it's amazing. Just the the changes that happen, the things that keep you up at night. And I had a good friend of mine who had started a couple of companies, and he told me this early, the things that keep you up at night, the list never gets shorter. It just changes. Right. And there's points where every 3 months, it's a completely different list. So yeah, it's crazy. And there really is no way to prepare you for that. And there's no way, it's people that, so I as someone who went to business school, like I can make fun of people who went to business school. People come out of business school, they said, oh, I really focused on entrepreneurial studies. And it's like, you can't learn that in school. Like you have to start a business so that you see all of these different problems.
Sean, how big do you want to get?
Yeah,
not you personally.
Yeah, right.
Daasity, okay. And I'm asking that question for a very pointed reason, because there's ambition, in my experience, is a double-edged sword.
Yep.
I was talking to you before we went live, and I was like, well, my business, got to X, and I was like, I woke up one morning, I was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And it was because I scaled it to a point where I kind of didn't recognize to the point we just discussed, right? Which was like, oh shit, like now I've got this thing, and this thing isn't what I expected it ever to be. And so happiness, or expectations minus reality, equals your happiness, doesn't it? So I mean, because you could be a small giant. Do you know what I'm saying? And you could hold on to this thing for 20 years for argument's sake, or not. You could just keep going on this funding cycle train and get to a Series B or C, and then eventually try and offload the thing. And I interviewed Bo Burlingham, and he wrote the book Small Giants, and he wrote about this interesting statistic where I think he interviewed like 300 founders who sold their businesses for like shit tons of money.
Yeah.
And he said like 9 out of 10 of them went into like clinical depression after they sold. They were rich, but they were depressed, and that's because they didn't have any sense of meaning or purpose in the struggle anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking you that question, like how, what, in terms of scale, like how much scale is enough here for you guys?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, and one that I've thought about a lot lately, from a personal standpoint, because I have my first child on the way in about 3 months. So I've started to have this thought process right around, listen, Daasity's been my baby. I mean, to be honest, it's been my baby for the last 6 years, right? So there is from a personal standpoint, there is a thought that, okay, yeah, at some point, Daasity's not around, right? Like, I'll be honest, like I'm not, and I mean, it may still be around, but I may just not be involved, right? If I just think about, if I take personal feelings out of it, just think about the business. I think Daasity could be a 100 million ARR plus behemoth SaaS company that is where we've got maybe we're not even just focused on direct to consumer anymore, right? Maybe it's B2B software, and we're really you think about other companies that kind of do this data aggregation piece of the pie, or just do data transformation, or just do visualization. And there are companies that just focus on one of those pieces and are $5 billion plus companies. So can Daasity get there? Yeah, absolutely. I think Daasity could be that big. I don't know if that's for me. I don't know. Listen, I've worked at very large companies, and it's not necessarily the most appealing aspect of work life to me, right? That's not. Yeah, right. That's I like the ability to be able to. I like to build stuff. I like to solve problems. I don't like dealing with bureaucracy and all the things that most people that don't like to, that either start companies or don't like to work at big companies, don't like to deal with. I'll say we're not there yet. There are, Daasity certainly has, I think, a ways to go before we're at any sort of scale where I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me anymore. And I think, to be fair, the management team that we have in place, the executive team we have in place, it's such a great team. It's such a great group of people to work with. And we all have a very similar feeling on culture, what we want the company to be, how we want to feel when we're going to work every day, that I don't think that we will consciously go in that direction without it just happening as a function of, well, we got so big that that's just where it ended up, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think, for our viewers who are watching us or listening to us, wherever you're catching the show, it's something you should think about, because it was something I didn't think about until I had to. And it's to your point. Firstly, congratulations on becoming a dad, man. It's the best thing.
You.
It's the hardest job ever, dude.
Yeah, I know.
I still can't believe it takes 20 years to assimilate a human.
Yeah, right.
It's unbelievable, dude. It's nuts. It's very frustrating. Gives you lots of gray hairs, but the hardest things are the most valuable things, right? But and I don't know whether it. And I also kind of went through that same process. Like when I also became a dad, I built the biggest business I ever had like 8 years ago, and then you start to ask these existential questions, right? It's weird, like the role of a kid in becoming as an entrepreneur, because it's like, oh shit, like I'm actually not the center of the universe anymore.
Right.
Or I'm about to be not the center, and then it happens, and then you don't know what's going on.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And to have to have to choose, because it's kind of like Daasity is your baby, right? It's like you've been running this thing as your own little baby, and now you've got a human baby, and now it's like, well, you have to choose, and so then you're forced into this interesting paradigm where you have to think about, well, what kind of lifestyle is enough for me,
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's especially going through what we've all just gone through with the pandemic and quarantine. And um, I think everyone had a lot of time to kind of think about those questions, right? Like especially coming out of it, it was like at first, I think, everyone felt this need to go be social and hang out with people and see friends and see family. But yeah, it was a lot of time to think about that. Like, what do I actually want out of life, right? Like, um, you're in this lonely, isolating situation. So, yeah, like what does that mean? Like, what does it mean, in terms of my work career, my life career, my work-life balance, like all of that. Yeah, it's I think what you're saying is really, really important for founders to think about. At the end of the day, I think a lot of founders think, well, wait, I'll grow my business as big as possible, right? And that success is what will feed me. But really, you're starting a company for a specific reason, likely because there was something about working for someone else that you didn't like, right? Maybe it was the type of the company, maybe it was just not being in control of your own destiny, whatever that was. And those things go away, right? At a certain point, your business gets to a size where those things go away. You're not, once you're raising money, you've got a board and you're answering to people and you have a boss. And, once you're a certain size, you're dealing with those same bureaucracy issues that you've had to deal with before. So yeah, I think it's really, really, really interesting thing for founders to think of.
Yeah, because you wind up building the thing that you hated in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And on that bombshell, it's time to take a quick break. Scale your business with your own AI-powered digital marketing assistant. Sign up today and get $250 of your first month's ad spend back. Check out meetotis.com/rapid returns for more. Raising money for your startup? Well, why don't you close your next funding round fast? Get investor-focused media and FaceTime with relevant investors in days. Visit showworksmedia.com for more. That's showworks with an X, media.com. Sean, what are you struggling with right now as it relates to scaling Daasity? Like, what's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I think, for us right now, I think it's the first 30 to 90 days of a merchant's onboarding experience. So it's part of that's onboarding. Part of that is just, I think, kind of getting them into the flow at Daasity, right? We're dealing with a technical product, and then we're dealing with customers that don't necessarily have a technical person on staff. And so there are a lot of different points where that can kind of go awry. And it's so I think those making sure that experience for merchants is as seamless, as easy to use as possible is kind of the main thing that's keeping me up right now.
So interesting. There's two people I want to connect you with. One is Frank Arellano. He's the co-founder and CEO of Revolve. They do SaaS payment optimization for like massive scale companies. But I think given what you're doing and what they're doing, I think there might be an interesting partnership. And then on the onboarding side, there's a guy I met today. Interestingly, he runs onboard.io. I'm going to bring it up on screen for everybody. But this is basically the solution to your problem around onboarding customers as a technology business. So I'll connect you to him also. Cool. Yeah, man. No, you're very welcome. So tell me, if you think about like the whole journey that you've been on, Sean, what has been the toughest decision that you've had to make when it comes to scaling Daasity, and what did you learn from it?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting question. I think I'll talk about kind of two different inflection points. Well, I'll talk about one first, which was really just our decision to move to a software model and at the same time kind of take our first round of venture funding. So this is, and I think this is kind of a a bit of an inflection point that I think a lot of people can have, especially if you're working in like a consulting services type startup. We had a steady stream of revenue, right? We had a steady stream of revenue. We had really cheap customer acquisition because all of our customers were coming either through referrals or through a partnership that we had with one of our technology providers. And like I said, Dan, my co-founder, and myself, were, essentially providing all of sales and merchant success and onboarding and all of that, which obviously isn't scalable. So we had to make the decision, listen, we're going to turn this into a product company, try and scale it, or are we going to, kind of keep going the direction that we're going, run this profitably? So it's a little bit scary, right? And then again, like I just mentioned, taking VC money, once you take that first venture round, well, then you've got a boss that wasn't there before. Now, I'll say we've been incredibly lucky with all of our investors. They are. I've heard so many horror stories about people taking venture money, having a board that they have no control over, that that are not fun to work with, and ours are great. They've been great partners. But it's still a scary decision. I think that's really the one that sticks out the most. I'll mention another one since I did mention the pandemic, which was we went fully remote shortly after COVID started, and we are still fully. Well, I'll say we have an office. It's very small. It's really just used for meetings. So for the most part, we are a remote company, and because of that, we've been able to hire all over the place, right? And it's great because it allows us to have coverage over different time zones and hire people that in California, San Diego might be more expensive. We can hire them if they live somewhere else for slightly cheaper. So there's benefits there, but to make it, obviously we didn't have a choice going into COVID where it was like, okay, everyone's working from home. But the decision to stick with that wasn't easy. There's pluses and minuses that come from working remote, and it's, but I think in the long run, it's been something that's been really beneficial for us.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to come back to scaling culture. So how many people are now in the company?
We've got just about 74, I believe, right now.
And they're all distributed?
Yes. So maybe, we probably still have maybe 30 or so in San Diego, but most of those were people that we had hired before COVID started.
Yeah. Well, it's I agree with you, though. I think it sucked, but it also opened up a new, I would say, level of acceptance around ways of working. To your point, dude, you don't want to be driving in San Diego traffic, going to the office when you've got a newborn.
Right.
Even if you're the boss. And by the way, and that same thing applies to like any parent, you know what I mean? Like whether they're a designer or a data analyst or whatever, like people want that choice. And we didn't have that choice because it just was never going to be accepted. Imagine coming, someone knocking on your door, Sean, and going, yo, I want to work from home for the rest of the year. Do you know what I mean? Like you're very cool. You'd find another job.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, we had, even after we've been working at home, for, over a year, we still had reservations around kind of keeping it that way. And we ended up, getting the small office that we had, was a way to say, all right, listen, it is still very valuable for us to be in the same room, maybe not the entire company, but maybe it's just, senior leadership, or maybe it's specific groups within the company, still very valuable to have that space when we need it. And me personally, actually, I like being in an office, not all the time, but I like being in an office, just fewer distractions. And that's kind of what I've been used to. But yeah, it's, I think you're right. It's opened us up to a lot of additional options in terms of the way we work and who we work with that would not have been there otherwise.
Yeah. And so how have you been able to scale your culture? Because I think we're all sitting in this situation. I know I mentioned Frank earlier. So Frank also, hires developers out in Europe, and then he's got a PR firm in the UK or whatever, so we're all, in this new scale kind of workforce dynamic, right? But it's it's difficult to scale culture. So what have you learned about doing that successfully?
Yeah. I think for the people that are still in San Diego, we do still have, we do have meetups here, and we do have happy hours here. And I think that stuff is it's really important just to have FaceTime. I'll say we tend to have done our hiring in fairly broad areas. So for instance, we have some developers in South America, and we have some customer support that's in Ohio, for instance. But for the most part, we have employees that live in Toronto, in San Diego, in some in New York. So there are kind of like little mini hubs across the country. I'll also say, because there are these hubs, it makes it a little easier for teams to kind of get together and if a manager is in San Diego, it's important for them to fly out and see those people face to face every once in a while. That's just, I think that is it's a human response mechanism, right? Of just seeing each other face to face that you just can't really get when you're on a Zoom call.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely. It's the same thing, by the way, with a sales call. It's like if you're trying to have a remote sales call, it still works, But if you're able to go and shake his or her hand, and then you get to meet Matt, and you get to meet Sean, and you get to, people have this thing called EQ.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that's filtered out through this digital medium now.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
So I want to have a quick bit of fun with you, Sean. So I'm going to give you the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine. And if you could go back to yourself on day one, services business, no product, no customers, nothing. And you think about all the things you've learned and failed at and succeeded at and so forth. What advice would you give yourself about scaling Daasity?
So I'll talk about two things. One is just a quote that I think it was from a book by, I think it was Ben Horowitz.
It was 0 to 1.
The hard things about the hard things.
Oh, yeah. That was
I think that's it.
Yeah.
He had a quote in there that I think it was from one of his former bosses or mentors or something, and he said, "There's no silver bullets. There's only lead bullets, and we need to just keep shooting." Right, and I didn't read that book until, I don't know, it was probably a year and a half ago. And that quote resonated with me because I was like, I could not have taken the experience of a startup better and just summed it up in one quote, right? It's like, you so rarely, so infrequently do you have one solution to a problem that's like, cool, we solved it. That was it. It was this one solution, right? No, it's like, you need to just keep throwing things at it. And it's not random. It's not, just try everything. It's, sit down, talk about it, come up with solutions. And then, see what kind of incremental results you can get from those solutions, because it's, maybe that all of them together get you to where you want to be. It may be that it's, 3 or 4 of them. It also kind of keeps me motivated when I'm thinking about, okay, I have a bunch of problems in front of me. How are we ever going to do this? How are we going to solve all these problems? Right. Well, it's like, you just keep cracking away at them. That's really the only way to get there.
And that, Sean, is how you wind up with a business you didn't expect to have.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. You keep cracking away and you solve enough of those problems. And the next thing you look up and you're like, wait, do I like this anymore? Yeah. Yeah. The second one I'll talk about that was, people had mentioned this to me when I started the company, and I thought I understood it, but I really didn't, which is just how important hiring the right people are, the right culture fits, the right just personalities. I think we've done a really, really good job of hiring, but you can always think back on 1 or 2 mistakes that cost you so much time and effort to undo. and those are, you can never get that time back, right? Yeah, there was, I can only think of a couple examples at Daasity, but yeah, it's those are killers. And it's if you could say I'm going to be perfect at any one thing in running my company, hiring is the one thing that I would pick.
Yeah, that's a tough one, dude.
Yeah.
I can tell you some nightmare stories about labor laws in South Africa for another time. Because, like, at least here you can go, you're fired. And then, I know there's some states where it's, there's right to work. But most of it's kind of like, you see it in the movies, right? It's like, you're fired. You're gone, dude. You did the wrong thing. You're not the right fit. In South Africa, that's the hardest thing to do. You cannot fire people because of this, because the unemployment rate's so high. And so there's a process you have to follow. And so it really, again, it's another thing of many things that prevents anything really from scaling in South Africa.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I know it is something that I've lived in California basically my whole life. And it's just the way that I think it works, right? Everywhere. But it's like, obviously that is not the case everywhere, which would make it an entirely even more important, right?
It's a horror show, man. I can tell you. So, Sean, let's wrap this up. What's your advice to a founder, him or her, listening to us right now? And they're on this, hey man, I need to scale this thing. I want to do it fast. What's your advice?
I would say, really, really, really understand your business metrics, right? Understand, like I mentioned earlier, your unit economics, understand, what is driving, what drives profit within your company, because, you may really dig into the data and come to an understanding that, listen, I've got an entire business line that doesn't work. It doesn't make sense, right? Or I need to change the pricing on it. And you may find that, hey, you've actually got some customers that you didn't think were super profitable, but they are. That to me is the kind of work that all startups are going to be doing from here on out, until we get to the next zero interest time period. But it's that, those are the kind of things that right now you have to be doing that work. You have to have that understanding to really, really understand your business and understand where to put pressure, where to put money, and where you want to kind of make your bets.
Can I just add to that? I think AI is essential. Like if you're on that job, like, dude, you have to use AI. Like, there's a thing called ChatGPT, and you can have an API call to your database, and you should basically offer that and put a margin on it and charge for it. Use it to retain your base or to scale it, because paying a data analyst to do it, or using anything other than that artificial general intelligence is a waste of time and it's inefficient.
I mean, that technology is so crazy to me. It's we've already seen how it's like producing better search results than Google, and it's producing better code than like programmers. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly, man. And there's a cool Chrome extension you should install. You can put ChatGPT into your Google search results.
Oh, nice.
Just search for integrate ChatGPT into your Google search or whatever.
Okay.
And install that Chrome extension. It actually makes a big difference, because I was bitching and moaning about that, because I was like, I don't actually like the Google experience.
Yeah.
I think it's cuck. Like, I don't think it's good. I think it could be way better. And now I've got this general intelligence sitting there explaining stuff to me over and above the search results, which is it's so interesting, right? Because you never ever would have thought that something would come along that would put Google in any kind of gray.
That's right. Yeah. It's crazy. It's one of those technologies where it's hard to even imagine where it is 12 months from now, let alone like 5-10 years from now, right?
Dude, your kid, I was chatting to my kid about AI. When I was first starting to play around with this, I was running around the house going, this is amazing. So now it's my co-founder, it's my co-host, it's my researcher, it's my financial modeler, it's my content creator, it's all those things. and you can't put a price on that. You literally can't. And it's just general, and it's trained on such a small like natural language model data set. It's like 175 million. If that gets up to like, who knows? If it just adds a nut, doubles that, like what it could do, or if we could start to look at other channels or whatever, like it's going to be so like people don't get it, man. Like the whole world has changed when that shit became real, because we were always like, I remember there was this talk I was watching. It was basically this heavy hits. I can't remember his name. He was talking on the stage at Cannes about AI, and he said, take the next 10,000 startups and just add AI. And that was like 8 years ago. Right. And we've been talking about it, and it's always been crap. And now it's not. So it's like people need to get on board, because it's changing everything. And I said to as parents keep talking about this, but I said to Frank the other day, I said, dude, like and also I do believe this. I do think we're witnessing the end of the knowledge era, meaning like how much knowledge can you individually retain in your mind, like and getting graded on that, and whole education system, and Frank's 8 or whatever. And I said to him, dude, by the time he's 18, so in 10 years' time, can you imagine what's going to be going on in this world with AI? It's going to be everywhere. And I believe we're going to be paying subscriptions for our own personal AI to protect us against other AIs. And it will be literally integrated everywhere. Siri won't be dumb, And then it's not about how much, because then the knowledge is all there anyway. It's then a case about, well, how do you approach constructive thinking strategically to solve problems, create innovation, new products and services, and things like that? That's the opportunity.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's, it's funny because I've had the same thought process around AI that protects you from other AIs, right? Or AI that protects a people or a country or whatever from other AIs. Like, that's kind of, it feels like that would probably be the direction it's going to go. Like you have enough bad actors out there that are going to have access to this stuff it's
AI insurance, bro.
Yeah.
You're going to subscribe, and it's going to learn about you. It's going to look at the way that you communicate, who you like, your friend network, all that stuff. And it's going to integrate across all platforms, your emails, your business, everything, your wife, the text messages you send, the WhatsApps you send, signals, everything. And it's going to be able to create a digital persona for yourself that is so like you, it's frightening. And then based on that, it's going to go, cool. Based on your profile, what is a possible threat? And based on that, it's going to put together a plan to say, cool, here's how I'm going to create value for Matt in this category of personal relationships, wealth creation, blah, blah, blah. Like when you sign up, I believe because I'm doing my Series 82 exam, so I'm learning about securities and all this kind of stuff. And I was looking at like exchange traded funds. And I went to this exchange traded fund, and it's like, cool. So you get all these securities, you go in there, you drop 10 grand, and you can choose a portfolio. Maybe it recommends a portfolio to you, but I wouldn't use another person's AI to do that if I had my own. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because then it's like, cool, here's my AI. Let's call her Susan.
And
and they'd figure it out.
Yeah. Because their data set is based around your experiences from like who knows how long and across all these different things, that is going to be way better than you answering a questionnaire or something.
And they know nothing about you. So it has to happen, right? Because it has to integrate, because if you want to really know your customer, KYC, you really want to know your customer, talk to its AI. So there has to be this web of artificial intelligence connections, right? So that you can create super personal portfolio recommendations as an example.
It's wild. It's wild. Yeah, I know. Thinking about what my daughter is going to be looking at in 18 years in terms of AI and everything else is it's impossible to really imagine.
Then, dude, okay, let's be real for a sec. I drive my wife nuts, right? So for a number of reasons. But one of those is I do this thing where I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna get Neuralink. When it comes, I'm gonna get it, because let's say this, right? How's this for a scenario? So in the same context, we all have our own personal AIs. How are you talking to it? You're talking to it verbally, and it's analyzing some aggregated data sets, right? I think that it's going to become you wouldn't be able to compete. So if you have two people, two entrepreneurs, I have Neuralink and you don't. So I'm able to just with my thoughts, communicate with AI, right? Where does that put me in terms of competitiveness, the ability to make effective decisions and blah, 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 knowing that there's this aggregated web of data points and connections, right? That's all AI driven. And if you don't have it, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah. So, it's like, you're getting things at the speed of thought, essentially, that are, to make decisions with that might take my team a week of crunching data to get to, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, so and then she's going to come along, and then what's the role of a parent then?
Yeah.
So, these are big questions, man.
Yeah. It's a little scary.
It is very scary. Like, I remember the Michelangelo virus. Do you remember? I don't know how old you are, but like the ping pong virus that used to come in like on the floppy disks, and then when you were
yes, yeah.
And you'd see it's like, the machine's infected with Michelangelo, haha. It's like that was the thing, dude. And and that was what? That was 90. No, it wasn't. It was like 19. How old was that? 97, 80, 90, 1990, somewhere around there. Yeah. So in 30 years, dude, we've now come this far, and it's accelerating. So in 18, you could expect a technology jump of triple what we've experienced to date. Yeah. And then we don't know where we are.
Right. Yeah. It's moving so fast that we can't really keep up, right, as in terms of how we're reacting to things. Let alone, and that's just like from a personal standpoint, let alone from like, think about the government trying to react to stuff like this. It's like, forget it. It's, you can't, you can't move fast enough.
Well, who knows what they're sitting on? You know that Google Engineer, that thing came out like before Chat GPT came out, and it was like, Google's got a sentient being AI, like, and they denied it. I don't think it, now it's so close.
Yeah, it is. It's close enough. It's close enough that it's in that uncanny valley, right? Where you're like, it's close enough that when it says something, if you're just talking to Chat GPT, asking questions, whatever, when it says something off, you're like, it's slightly off, and you're like, wait, why does this sound weird? This seems really creepy, and it's more creepy than if it was like really off.
Scary time, dude. I'll be here on the same train with you. So if you get stuck, let me know.
Excellent. Sounds good, Matt.
Sean, good chatting to you, buddy.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.